Boy, it is so good to win a game. Just get one on the board. It doesn't say 0 and 8, it says 1 and 7. It just feels a little bit better. Yeah, I get it. Some of the students, went on the field, but the timer went off, so technically it doesn't count as a field rushing. Josh, buddy, you were at the game. How are you doing? How was the game, buddy?
It was fun. It was kind of what we expected going down, seeing an 0 and 7 team. The vibe was rough to start, right? But once those students started taking the shirts off and they did whatever they wanted to do for a while there, it got that team going. And I think we saw a different team on Saturday. I think kind of some fresh air breathing through that team with a new head coach and to go forward, a new quarterback one probably.
We can talk about that in just a second, but those shirtless students brought the energy, and someone else who can also bring the energy is Mr. Carter Bain, CBS sports writer, who is joining us today on Chainsaw Crew. Carter, it's your third time back on our show, man. You're the leading guest of our show. We appreciate you, dude, so much for coming back on to talk some ball. How you doing, man?
What an honor. Third time's a charm too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Although I feel like the tone of this episode might be a little more somber than it has been in the past one I've been on, but hey, we can put a positive spin on things, right?
I mean, hopefully, right? Again, it just feels good to win a game, even if it's Lafayette.
Exactly.
Who cares, dude? You got one on the board. But man, you've been a busy bee. I know you've been writing a lot for CBS. What have you been tasked with recently with CBS Sports, man?
Well, obviously a lot of football. That's kind of the it's kind of the needle mover for us right now. We got basketball starting this week though, so that'll be fun to kind of dip our toes back into basketball because when I started over on CBS, it was like I think the conference finals in the NBA. So it kind of got the tail end of that at the start, and then it went silent, obviously. But it'll be fun, and I think the Blazers should be somewhat palatable this year. So I'm excited to catch some Blazers basketball. Moved out to Boston, so probably taking some Celtics games. Definitely gonna go when the Blazers come out here. Um, but yeah, man, it's been busy. Obviously, all the coach firings the last couple of weekends has kind of dominated our news cycles. And then the NFL's been crazy too with all the parity and the upsets and all the injuries, unfortunately, this season. So never a dull moment.
Yeah, and speaking of coaching firings, you wrote about Coach Bray getting let go on October 12th, and you guys can go find that at the CBS Sports website. And there was a good quote in there that you wrote, and it said, quote, instead of using a 2-year purgatory to build towards the future of being a perennial G6 football program, Oregon State fell further into the abyss. End quote. In your opinion, how much of the last two seasons are on the coaches, and how much is it on Scott Barnes also?
Well, I think if you put it on the coaches, you also put it on Barnes, right? Because who hires the coaches?
Right.
So it's tough because you have to take everything with a grain of salt because of the cards that Oregon State was dealt. You know, it's hard to it's hard to hire a coach when you don't have much to sell. And Oregon State, frankly, didn't have much to sell 2 years ago. And
For sure.
I thought that it was, I will always commend Trent Bray for what he did for stepping up into a role that I think it was pretty clear he was uncomfortable in. And, frankly, if we're all being honest with ourselves, probably not ultra qualified for. At the end of the day, he had really bright moments. And I think he deserves as much credit for that as he does blame for bottoming out at 0 and 7 before his firing. I think to an extent, you have to blame some of the offensive struggles on him for, in hindsight, hiring the wrong guy and not moving off of him when it became clear that it was a big issue. But again, like we won't know behind closed doors how much pressure there was from Scott Barnes to make a move on the assistant staff because there are all these inner workings of an athletic department and a football program that go on behind closed doors that we'll never know about. And, was it Trent Bray that said, no, I'm not going to make a change? Was it Scott Barnes that didn't pressure him enough into it? These are the things that we may never know. And it's hard to place blame on that. But I think, we'll look back on this era a couple of years from now fondly because of what Trent Bray means to the program, especially if Oregon State gets back to the right place. But it's going to sting for a while because they've got a big hole to dig out of. There's no doubt about it. And this season's not going to be fun to look back on, but the fun moments of Trent Bray's tenure. I think Oregon State fans eventually will get to a point where they can look back on it and say, it's kind of cool to have a program legend like that leading the team for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh and I kind of touched on that last week after his firing. And just, I think the general message from a lot of Beaver fans is just being thankful for the guy for stepping up in that role. And we actually had Florida State general manager last week, Derek Ray, on, and he was kind of obvious. He was kind of not obvious, but he was trying to like hint at like Trent never really wanted the job. He kind of just stepped into it, right? And we also asked him about general managing, how it works at Florida State, and he mentioned that fit and resources would be obviously the main factor for Oregon State getting a GM in Oregon State for their football program mainly. If OSU were to get a coach who necessarily doesn't have portal or NIL experience, is a football minded GM absolutely needed to clear things up for the future for the players and the fans, especially with all this blueprint sports going on? Like, do they need somebody to step in and just be a football minded GM?
Totally. I think that's the way the sport's moving. Like, look at the successful programs. I mean, you look at a Vanderbilt, they were one of the first to hire a GM. Alabama had a GM, very early on in this process, and now Kalen DeBoer's taking them. They look like the best team in the SEC right now. So I think the teams that haven't gotten there yet will eventually, because that's just the way that things are moving. And the key for Oregon State is to not be left in the dust there, like they've been left in the dust with a lot of other things. You haven't necessarily seen all of the G6 programs adopt it like the power programs.
Mm-hmm.
Resources obviously comes into play there. But if Oregon State, is going to be at the cutting edge of the new Pac-12, of the G6, of that race for that final college football playoff spot, and what a better opportunity than right now to go find a GM who kind of breaks that mold at your level and in your conference. And I think especially too, you look at the coaches that are being floated out there on hot boards and kind of the wish lists. Like, yeah, if you do get one of those kind of retread guys who gets back into coaching, like an Ed Orgeron, a Gruden, like I don't know that these guys are the perfect fits for Oregon State. But if you do go a route like that, or if you go with someone, not those two that maybe doesn't have the new era experience and acumen, it makes it all the more important because, like, spoiler alert, but NIL, rev share, portal is not going away. In fact, it's only going to become a bigger deal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're left in the dust doing things like they operated in 2018, you're not going to be able to survive in 2028 when everyone else has a GM and has had a GM for 5 years and, they've worked out all the kinks.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of drama in this athletic department the last month, and it seems like with starting 0-7, now 1-7, that is kind of taken over what the story is right now this year in Corvallis. With everything that's gone on, what is the mindset for this Oregon State football program going forward? And kind of the question I have for you is, when you're going to hire a new coach here, it seems like, and Rob and I have talked about this might be the most important hire that Oregon State's going to make. And it seems like you're going to go two ways with it. You're either going to go get an up and coming FCS guy that, to me, feels like they're going to use this job as a stepping stone to further their career, or you dip back and maybe you go get a Jonathan Smith. And there's a lot of people in Corvallis right now that don't want to forgive that guy and see him step foot on campus. So this is a loaded question. You answer it however you want, but what are the next steps for this football program hiring their next head coach?
Sure. Well, I'll start here. I think we've seen that this coaching carousel is going to be seismic. It already has been. I mean, nobody 3 weeks ago saw James Franklin getting fired. Billy Napier, the writing was on the wall there. But point being, we've already had more big name coaches fired at this point in the cycle this year than we had all of last year. And it's a double-edged sword for a school like Oregon State. Does someone like Billy Napier, who's a proven winner at your level now, at Louisiana, does he go looking for a head coaching job somewhere? Does he try to latch on as an OC somewhere? You might be able to get someone who, maybe didn't pan out at their power program, but can win at your level. And, who knows if a power program's ever going to want to take a shot on him. Maybe he'll end up at Oregon State for a long time. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. At the same time, you're going to be competing with a lot more schools because guess what? As power programs look to fill their openings, oftentimes they'll look to G6, and a lot of Oregon State's top candidates are going to be lower level G6 leaders, FCS coaches, coordinators who are naturally going to kind of rise to the top as the carousel spins. So there's a lot of competition, but there's also a lot of opportunity if you look above at the guys who didn't work out. And I think that's where it has to start. You have to swing for the fences because, like you said, this is such an important hire. Like you cannot afford to mess this up because, to the bigger picture part of your question, Oregon State's at a foundational kind of crux right now. This is kind of the fulcrum for where past becomes future as far as the the big picture athletic department entering a new conference, reshaping what kind of a player you are at this lower level that unfortunately you've fallen down to. If you want to be a perennial contender, and Oregon State has everything it needs to be, because like I said in that article, Oregon State's a power program in a group of six
Mm-hmm.
conference.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no reason Oregon State should not run the new Pac-12. I guess Boise State might have something to say about that because Boise State probably could have been a power conference team years ago. But that's why I think it's so important to get this hire right because you don't want to be playing catch up. You want to assert yourself right away. And, maybe that looks like going out and getting an FCS coach that can bring some guys up with him that can compete right away. I mean, look at what Kurt Signetti did at Indiana. He brought a bunch of group of five players up and they went to the playoff. So it can happen in 1 year if you hire the right guy.
And you're also seeing it kind of at Washington State too. Jimmy Rogers brought a lot of his guys, and the last 2 weeks they
Hmm.
have been standing toe to toe on the road with top 25 teams. And quite frankly, they should have won at Virginia. But that's it's such an important role in college football now because the 4 year rebuild. Because Mike Riley's talked about this. Like you don't have guys for 5 years anymore. You don't get to sit a guy and say, hey, next year you get to play special teams, and then year three you get to start. That those days are gone. It's
Yep.
year two is your new year four, and we already saw that obviously with Trent Bray getting fired in year two. Colorado State made a move as well with Jay Norvell. It kind of felt like they finally needed to do that. So the Pac-12's already going to have two holes to start their new conference. Now, with Oregon State, we have always talked about like, hey, do they need to know what Corvallis is like? Do they need to know the small community first before they go there? And let's just say it's probably going to happen, right? Michigan State's probably going to move on from Jonathan Smith, right? It doesn't look good for him. The boosters don't like him. He's not really connecting well. Has That's been the report at least. I know a lot of Oregon State fans, like Josh mentioned, wouldn't like this, but do you call him? Do you give his agent a call if he becomes available?
How did it end between him and Barnes? Do they
Right,
have a good relationship?
right.
Because it looks like Barnes is probably going to be the one that's making this hire. You can, argue about whether that should be the case, but um, I don't think you get this far into a head coaching search without knowing who your athletic director is going to be. And so I think that plays a role. If you read the tea leaves at the time, it sounded like Scott Barnes, was pushing to extend and Smith didn't want to. And, did it get ugly behind the scenes? Don't know. That's not something that Barnes is likely to go on the record to say. That's not something that Smith would say. So that plays a role. If Smith left on relatively amicable terms with Barnes, I think you have to call him. I mean, the track record's there, right?
Hmm.
He won at your program.
Yep.
It's not going to go over well at first, but what if he comes back and he wins again? I think people are going to buy back in if Oregon State's winning 9, 10 games in the Pac-12
Hmm.
and competing for playoff spots. They're not going to care who the coach is. Um, it's just if it crashes and burns, it would get really ugly. So it's a risk. It would be a risk. There's no doubt about it.
For sure. And if it feels like you're just taking a risk on anybody, right? Because you're asking some new guy to come in and to sell Corvallis to kids uh, that they may have no idea what Corvallis is, and that's just tough. So, like for me, like Smith is just an automatic. Like you go out and get him if he's available. Like he can
Mhm.
sell Corvallis to a sheet of paper if he wanted, and that's just what you need right now. You need someone that can come in right away and get this program back to where it needs to be. And we saw him do it fairly quick with his tenure here at Oregon State, but Say Smith doesn't get fired, probably going to. What is your short list, top three candidates that you want to see get this job possibly?
I haven't. There's a lot of going down the line that you have to do because, like I mentioned, I think you start big with guys that are flaming out at other programs. I think you give Billy Napier a call. He's a Southern guy, so it's a really strange fit. But I mean, he just coached at Florida. Like he didn't just walk into that job. He earned that job. These are the kinds of coaches that you need to look at if you want to win at a high level because they've proven that they can. They've gotten to the SEC. What if Hugh Freeze doesn't pan out at Auburn? What if they move on from him? He won quite a bit at the G6 level again. So I don't think that regional fit matters as much now as it did before. And so I think now is the time that if you are going to go outside of the box, you have to give those guys a call. They're going to be looking for jobs. Like I said, they might, try to latch on as a coordinator. Maybe they'll wait a year and see what the cycle looks like next year, but you have to start big. Now, I think there's also a lot to be said for looking below. And like I mentioned, if you find a coach who's had a lot of success, you mentioned Brent Vegan at Montana State. One name that I really like, Brendan Marion, a
Sac
guy
State,
who
yeah.
was just a fantastic coordinator. This guy can coach offense with the best of them. He's building something at Sac State. He'll probably bring his best players from Sac State with him to Oregon State. So you kind of hit the ground running. He's going to be good schematic. He can recruit, and he's young. He's an up and comer. It's going to take a few years before someone plucks him at the G5 level. So there are different avenues you can go. But I think, like I said, you start big with a fired coach at the high level. If they're not interested, then you look below and find someone who can kind of transition in smoothly and bring a lot of energy because I think there's something to be said for hiring someone who's winning versus hiring someone who just flamed out at another school.
Right.
And so if you don't get the big name, there's a lot of value in hiring an up and comer.
Moving on from some coaches, man. Let's look into the future of this Pac-12, okay? Whoever's coaching Oregon State and Colorado State for the next year and beyond. How do you see this new Pac-12 conference kind of playing out on the football field?
Probably Boise State, UNLV, Oregon State, Washington State, and then the rest. I mean, it's tough to say because the dynamics, like I said, the dynamics are so strange because you have a couple of power conference programs, but they're maybe not. I mean, in Oregon State's case, they're certainly not, but they're not firing on all cylinders. So where do they fit in the pecking order? Because if you threw Oregon State and Washington State into the Mountain West 5 years ago, they run the conference. If you throw them into the Mountain West now, they're probably in the middle of the road. I mean, Oregon State lost to Fresno State.
Mhm.
Fresno State's solid, but not special. So I think Boise State hits the ground running, and I think they're the favorite out of the gate next year. Washington State is going to be fine. That program's been through change before. They've made it out okay, and it looks like they're going to make it out okay this time. Where Oregon State fits into it, ask me in 3 months when we know who the coach is and and what transfers he brings with him. But um, I think there's a clear divide in this new conference. When they were building it, I was really skeptical of Colorado State and Utah State. I just think that there's a difference between those programs and your Boise States, your Oregon States, your Wazoos. And to be quite frank, I think they'll be bottom dwellers. I want to see who Colorado State hires, but I think you'll see a divide there. So if Oregon State can stay above those in year one, that transition year, it'll set a solid foundation, even if you're not competing at the very top. I think it's cause for concern if you're not competing at the very top of this conference in year two.
One school that kind of sticks out to me is Texas State because they were gaining a lot of momentum to start the season. GJ Kenny, young and upcoming, very smart head football coach. They've kind
Hmm.
of hit a speed bump here this season. It was honestly right when he started getting his like rumors. Oh, he might go fill the Oklahoma State job. He might do this. And then they started just to start playing like shit, honestly. And they've lost a couple of games that they shouldn't have. How does Texas State play into this new conference? And I agree with you as well with Colorado State and Utah State, but like Colorado State just put in a ton of money to their athletic programs. Like they should be a lot better, hopefully going
Hmm.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah, Texas State, I think, is a long game play. It's a very new athletic department at the FBS level, and if you project it out 20 years from now, I think you could look at them as being a real perennial contender at this level, just because they're going to have the recruiting base. It's Texas, so there's going to be money down there. They've already proven that they can hire coaches. GJ Kinney, as you mentioned, he's done a lot of good things. I think he should have left last year when, the iron was hot, but
Mm.
that's besides the point. I don't know that they're, again, firing on all cylinders in year one, year two, year five, year 10 of this conference. But if you look at it in 2035, 2040, they could be a power.
Yeah, and looking ahead, it definitely seems like Malik Murphy will not be in an Oregon State uniform next year. And we saw kind of a change of who's going to run this offense, hopefully, this last week. In an era where NIL is just means so much in college football, is there buyer's remorse in getting Malik Murphy, especially with all the hype this season coming into it? And do you think maybe the NIL and Oregon State they kind of look into like a more line of scrimmage positions and non-QB skill players?
It's tough, man. Like we've seen this at a couple other schools too. And look at Oregon. Mekhi Hughes comes in as, five-star running back and he's like fourth on the depth chart and now he's redshirting. Like this just happens and it was always going to happen. And now the fact that the players are making $1 million when they come over, it just heightens the disappointment. And as you said, yeah, I think sure, buyer's remorse, fair. You could have spent that money elsewhere. But you don't know that. Like Malik Murphy was the best quarterback statistically in Duke history. You have no reason to believe that it's not going to pan out. But it's the transfer portal. Like guys just aren't going to be good fits at every new school that they come to. So you have to spend money to you have to risk money to make money, essentially. You got to spend money to make money. And just because you spent X amount of dollars, $1 million on Malik Murphy, that doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. If you sat here and, Malik Murphy was playing out of his mind, you'd say, dang, I'm glad we got him for $1 million and not two. So it goes both ways.
For sure.
Moving forward, no, I think you absolutely still have to to set aside money for a quarterback. The quarterback is always going to be the most important position on the field, and the market's going to be the tightest. They're going to be more expensive than a receiver. Left tackle is going to be more expensive than a linebacker. Like positional scarcity is a real thing, talent scarcity is a real thing, and just because a player doesn't work out one year, that doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision, and certainly doesn't mean that you shouldn't invest in that position moving forward. Because it's kind of it's the entry fee essentially for your football season. You're gonna have to spend a lot of money on your quarterback.
And that's something that's going to be really important for the next man leading the Oregon State football program. It's going to be interesting to see whoever they want to go, whatever direction. I know Ed Orgeron reached out. Apparently, all these guys coming in, but it's going to be interesting, man. Oregon State has a lot of work to do this offseason. Scott Barnes he's a hard man to trust at this point. He did make a good hire last time, though, after the Gary Anderson debacle. So we will see. Carter, man, thank you so much for coming on. We got like 8 minutes before Game 7 starts, so I appreciate you for coming on right before the game. If you're on YouTube, you can see him wearing his Mariners hat. So we appreciate you, dude. He's out in Boston now. You guys can go follow him on Twitter at Carter Bahns, Bahns. Last thing for you, man. How should Oregon State fans handle their expectations in this new era of the conference?
Shoot for the moon. Like I said, there's no reason that Oregon State cannot run this conference. They should be right up there with Boise State every single year. Should be right there with Wazoo every single year. And if you win this conference, more often than not, you're going to the playoff. That's just the reality of the G6 structure. I know the Americans solid. I know the Sun Belt is kind of up and coming. Pac-12 day one is as strong of a conference as any of them. And I think with the resources Oregon State has, Scott Barnes said this when he talked to John Canzano. You're no longer playing catch up. You are the leader. Maintain that position, step on other schools' throats, and win the dang thing every single year. That should be the expectation, and that's why you have to hit the higher out of the park.
Are they going to go on the road and beat Boise State consistently? I mean, they can't even go to Pullman and win consistently.
Hey, I mean, even when they were a power program, going on the road to Boise was tough. So
Exactly.
that's why I'm saying you got to be right there with them. You don't have to be
Mhm.
above them because I think Boise State's in a really good spot in this conference.
Yeah.
But as long as you're there with them, man, it's bright future. Still
Yeah.
can be a bright future.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Hey, we saved you about 5 minutes, man. Go grab you a cold one. And thank you so much for coming on again, dude. We appreciate you. We will see you next time, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Carter Baines, man, three-time Chainsaw Crew guest, dude. That's
Stud.
just stud, absolute stud. And I know Beaver Nation loves him. We miss him over at Beaver Blitz. We miss him just covering the team. He's one of the best, man, and he's doing a lot at CBS Sports. You guys need to go follow his work. Follow him on X. I know I said Twitter earlier. I'm such an old head. It doesn't matter. But yeah, go ahead and give him a follow if you haven't already done that. Yeah, dude, a lot of good stuff from him. A lot of good, interesting points about chasing the next head coach, our expectations going forward. And he did say, if the bridge hasn't been burned between Jonathan and Oregon State, give him a call. But Josh, man, how are you feeling after our first win? Just talking to Carter, everything going on. We had a great episode last week with Derek. Thank you so much, guys, for coming in and listening to that, watching that. If you're a Florida State fan, a lot of them are pissed off that he came onto our podcast. Oh well, you lost to Stanford.
Sorry,
Double
not
birds. You guys
sorry.
stink. Sorry about that. Doesn't seem like a Derek problem. Kind of seems like a Florida State problem. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, man, how you doing?
We're here, man. We finally got the monkey off the back, and dang, dude. I, I didn't have a lot of expectations going in this Saturday, and I was talking to some people before we took off to head down to Corvallis, and it's like, yeah, you just don't know. You felt like with the vibe being 0-7 and just where this team was sitting, like you most of the time when there's a head coaching change and you get an interim coach, there's a lot of good things that come from that, right? But you just don't know. This football team was such a wild card coming into this. What were you going to get? Were you just going to get the team that we saw for the last 7 weeks that didn't want to be there whatsoever, or were you going to get a different coached Rob Akey football team? And I think it took a full half of football to finally get going, but there was one key change that they made
Hmm.
that
Who was that?
honestly
Who was
turned
that?
the whole game around. And it's funny that we sit here and we're going to talk about this because I remember for a handful of weeks, Rob, me and some of you, I sat there and I defended Malik Murphy, and it's funny hearing Carter talk about like buyer's remorse, no buyer's remorse, and if Malik was out there balling right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be talking about it, and it's hard to remember that, right? Because there's always two sides of it, and we would have been thankful that, like Carter said, we would have been thankful that we would have got him for 1.5 and not any more money. But here we are regretting, and we can't return to sender. There's no non-cash receipt to return, so here we are, and we saw this coaching staff make that tough call Saturday. And what happened? We saw an Oregon State football team that I think we should have saw from week one. We saw Anthony Hankerson being Hank the freaking tank and running the
Hmm.
ball down a defense's throat for once. And we saw a quarterback that was able to go make plays. And it opens a lot when you're able to run an RPO system and you're going to make a defense respect you in many different ways. Granted, it's probably not at the level that you want to see this Oregon State team win against. But when you're sitting 0-7, you take any freaking victory you can go get.
Every time. I'm not complaining anymore. What did PJ Fleck say after Minnesota beat Nebraska for the sixth straight time? He just said, "Hey man, I've been 1-11. I've
Yeah.
done those seasons before. I'm not going to tell people how to celebrate, right? Because Minnesota rushed the field against Nebraska. It was like, yeah, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal when you beat them 6 times in a row. But for the Oregon State fans, like, dude, it's been so long. November of last year, late November of last year was the last time you saw this football team win a game. And yeah, I just think as the game went on, it was worrisome at first. It felt like is an FCS team that's not even any good going to beat us? Like they don't do anything special on offense. It was literally just run up the middle, quarterback run, or throw a go ball. That was their
Yeah.
three plays on offense, and it was just
And it
they
was
don't.
working. It
And
was
it
working.
worked because you know what? Jaleel Tucker on the outside for Oregon State is an absolute issue. He is just getting picked on, and if I'm Washington State in 2 weeks, and if he's on the field, we're throwing it at him, throwing it at
every
him,
time,
throwing it at him
every time.
every time, dude. And he did improve in the second half for sure. But honestly, yeah, you see them not throwing it at him as much because maybe he's getting better. But I, I would just throw it at him no matter what because he's probably going to interfere or hold because fundamentally he's struggling, dude. And I hope he can turn it around. I'm not going to come on here and just be like, he's a terrible player. No, I want him to get better. Obviously, I think if you're playing corner at Oregon State right now, it's a hard job. Because
For sure.
I put out an X. I was like, this is one of the worst, if not the worst, secondary corner wise that Oregon State has put out in a long time. It was brutal to watch in that first half. But you know what? Second half, they turned it on. I think Oregon State just finally was just kind of like, oh, we're a lot bigger than you. Oh, we're a lot faster than you. We can just run
Yeah.
around you and run over you and just I forgot about that. I wish they would just do that against App State. I wish they would have done that against Fresno State. But well, they kind of did it against Fresno State. But I just wish they would have done it because this team absolutely should be at least 3-4 or 3-5, 4-4 right now, dude. Like they should absolutely have 3 or 4 wins on the board right now, and they don't. And yeah, it's just that first half was just kind of a culmination of just like this team looks like they don't have any fire to their guts right now. It looks like they don't want to be out here. And second half, completely different team. And the turning point, like you mentioned, was when Malik his first drive in the second half after we get the stop after they tried the fake punt but they lined up illegally. Their punter made an insane play on that, by the way, breaking
He
the
did.
tackle to throw. I was like, oh
Yeah.
no. But thankfully they lined up illegally. And then Malik throws that ball into double coverage, and it should have been picked off. 100% should have been picked off. The guy drops it, and then the Oregon State ends up punting. We don't see Malik the rest of the game, unless he was on the sideline. And honestly, at that point, man, just like the Wake Forest game, it was the right call. You gotta make a change at quarterback because whatever's not working, it's just not gonna fix itself at this point. And like you said, man, with Danny Langsdorff at the helm, the first half was more of the same stuff, right? It just felt like it was Gunderson still calling the plays because I think at some points when Malik is in the game, they're trying to have that offense that relates to Malik's style of game, but he doesn't do it. Like the things that he's supposed to do well, and like he's supposed to be an accurate thrower, he's supposed to have a deep throw, a deep ball threat. He's not doing that for you. And then you bring in a guy like Jabari Johnson, and Danny Langsdorff is like, I know his strengths. This is what we're gonna do.
For sure.
And they
Yeah.
run RPO like the rest of the game essentially. And like those gun runs that you saw earlier in the game when Malik is handing them off, they don't work because the defense knows that Malik is not tucking that ball and running. He hasn't really done it all year. Okay, so the defense doesn't have to account for Malik Murphy in those situations. With a struggling offensive line, when you run RPO, someone is responsible for the quarterback and someone else is responsible for the running back. You're making the defense choose. And it's just the best way to go about things right now. And I hope that they finally just say, Jabari's going to be our guy going forward. That's how we're going to roll. I think the entire season up until this point under Bray was, yeah, we're paying Malik a lot of money. We probably should have him on the field, right?
I mean, but when you see what happened on Saturday, again, I don't want to say he can't run an offense, but again, what we saw transfer over from Duke is not even close to being the same person. It's not,
No.
there's not any percentage that is actually Malik Murphy from last year. It's not. And he has wide receivers. They still don't use tight ends for some reason. I don't know
I mean,
what's
they're
going
they're
on.
trying to, but yeah,
But
yeah.
when you put the money aside for a second, right? Because a lot of people want to be like, it's 1.5 million, the dude's doing absolutely nothing, okay? And even Carter said it, and it's a good reminder for me because I tend not to think about a lot of this stuff. I like to just to jump the gun sometimes, and it's I shouldn't. But when you have people coming over, we'll use Malik as this prime example. Not every single person is going to fit into what you're going to do here at Oregon State. And I think sometimes, like what Carter was saying, is you have to just take that chance that you're going to get that Malik from Duke, that same Malik Murphy you had last year. And unfortunately, it's just one of those times where it didn't work out. And we've seen it for the last 7 weeks. And we saw it for a half and 2.5 minutes into the second half on Saturday. And if I'm Coach Akey. If I'm Danny Langsdorf, I'm not letting Malik see the field the rest of the year. You can't.
Mhm.
If the offense is going to run like they did with Jabari, then you have to do that. If you want to win football games, Malik is not sniffing this field the rest of the season. And that I don't think is an unpopular opinion right now because I think a lot of people realize that it's just not working out. And it sucks. It took 7 weeks to finally figure that out. But if that's Coach Akey figuring it out for this football program, then kudos to him for going out there and making that call because I'm sure it wasn't tough. It wasn't easy.
Just like he said in his opening press conference, he's like, "Well, I was told I got the keys to the program, so I'm gonna do what I want to do." And yeah, I think it's just the obvious choice, right? And I'm not like the biggest like, yeah, Jabari, he's the guy. Like he did have a throw in the
He had a terrible pick in the first
exactly. He had
half.
a throw in the first half where you're like, oh God, what are you looking at? You know? And there's some things that obviously hinder the some of the like best parts of the offense, like Trent Walker, right? I think the best quarterback for Trent, unfortunately, is Malik
He's Malik,
because
for sure.
I think Jabari's issue is, and it happened one time in the second half. They got behind the sticks, and he did complete an out route, and they got the first down on a 3rd and 10, I believe. And I think it was to Gabe Milborn, who had a decent game. But it's like, are you going to be able to do that against Wazoo? Because look, let's the rest of the schedule. Wazoo is the only decent team left on the schedule, and you play them twice, right? Is that going to work? You know, you're behind the sticks. You know, you have a dumb false start, or you have a holding penalty, and now you're 2nd and long, 1st and long. Like, is Jabari going to be that guy to like? It's okay. Like, we'll rip a seam, we'll rip an out route, we'll get something going here because obviously you have to throw the ball in those situations to typically get out when you're behind the sticks. Can Jabari consistently be that guy? I don't think so. He could. We haven't really seen a ton of him, right? We haven't seen him like get back and throw it as much as he can because typically when he's in there, it's like option. They're gonna run option.
No, for sure. And I think that's what's hard with Jabari is I think the mentality is a run first quarterback, right?
Hmm.
Get through 1 or 2 reads. If it's not there, you're just gonna tuck the ball and run. And I think that's just the opposite spectrum of what you got with Malik, where there was no run. It wasn't gonna happen. It was I'm gonna throw double, triple coverage, and if it somehow works out, then it works out. Well, now you're getting that opposite side of the spectrum with Jabari, and it's the lesser of two evils. It feels like. Do you want the guy that could potentially complete a deep pass here and there, which we haven't really seen all year? Or are you going to take Jabari that when you get behind the sticks, you feel like you're in trouble no matter what, because now you're asking him to go out and pick up 10, 15 yards when you need it, when I don't know, but if, to me, it feels like he'd much rather tuck the ball and run. So it's weighing this system of what do you want, right? Now, do I think Malik is going to start against Wazoo? Probably. Would I be mad if they go to a dual quarterback type thing? That's fine. My heart tells me that Malik cannot see the field anymore. You can't. And if he comes off the bench because Jabari's struggling against Wazoo, then that's fine also. But I want to see this second half roll over into that Wazoo game, right? Now you have a bye. You're sitting here into a bye, and it feels like it might be the best worst case scenario ever because you feel like you finally got something going and you don't want to stop that. But now you're gonna
Which is correct. They played 8 straight weeks. It's like,
but maybe it is time for that much needed break where you can sit back, look at film, see everything that good that happened on Saturday. Now, how do you replicate that? It 100% feels like you're going to go out and start Jabari Johnson. And if that doesn't happen, I think there's going to be a lot of frustrated people because it's like, what are we doing? Malik has done nothing for us. And I'm not here to badmouth Malik, right? I don't want to be that person. I don't. But when what we're seeing is not getting delivered, and then Jabari comes in and it is getting delivered,
yeah.
it's crazy to see the difference between the two quarterbacks on the field.
Yeah, and there's like a clear scheme. Like there's a clear identity when he's in the game, right? It's all right, hey, we're gonna run RPO and we're gonna run it until you stop it. And Jabari was running all over the field. And I think in some cases too, we've seen it with Jabari against like lesser opponents. Like he's really able to run around guys and like, be his shifty self. When he faces a defense with a little bit more speed, he's definitely struggled to run around guys a little bit. So that's going to be something to look at when he's playing against Wazoo in a couple of weeks. But now, like you mentioned, this bye week really comes at an odd time, and it's a really interesting time for the quarterback room because I guarantee you these next 2 weeks of practice are going to be Malik and Jabari are battling for QB1
For
to play
sure.
against Wazoo, and this is the moment where, I'm sorry, I'm going to curse again. Does Malik give a shit enough to actually want to start? Is he really a competitor like they always, oh, yeah, no, Malik's a great competitor? Because I haven't seen that from him since the Cal game when he's yelling at coaches. And at this point, again, another red flag that we probably ignored. But does he care enough to want to start the rest of the season for a 1-17? Because we all know when the clock hits zero, when they're in Pullman at the end of November, that dude is see ya, I'm out of here. He's going to go hit the portal again. He's going to go find another home, and it's going to be his fourth school. So it's like I don't think the next incoming coaching staff's going to want him around anyway because they're probably going to want their own guys, and it's just does he care enough? Does he want to actually start a game for Oregon State? And does he want to get better? Because like you said, this is not the Duke quarterback that we got. It's on Gunderson as now he is just the quarterback coach. It's on him to figure it out. And it through 8 weeks, like I always say, if you're a longtime listener of Chainsaw Crew, your problems are your problems. And Malik has problems, man. He likes to throw that ball off his back foot quite a bit. Yeah, I was giving the keys, man. So I'm gonna take Malik Murphy out the field. I'm gonna play Jabari Johnson. All right. That's all. I want to see some smiles on my faces, okay? But hey, that's Rob Akey, baby.
That's pretty good though.
Do you like that? Hey, how about
I
the
do.
cough just doing that? He's got like he's got like the Colorado version of like Ed Orgeron a little bit. And speaking of Ed Orgeron,
Yo.
so these coaching search articles have been, running around for a lot of fans to read. And I think a lot of them have had the same stuff on them, right? It's pretty much like the same 8 to 10 names on every single person's article. But what happened was Ed Orgeron was reportedly, this is just a report. I don't know if he really did it. I don't know who to trust anymore. But it was reported that he reached out and he's interested and could potentially move back to the West Coast. Okay, I think that sparked a lot of Beaver fans on X and on Facebook for a day, right? And I think that's really settled down since. I think a lot of people have been like, well, let me think about that for a second. And other people are still like, I still want that guy. He has a national championship. We should go win with him and just try him out, right? Josh, I think, I don't know how you still feel about this, but at first you were like, yeah. How do you still feel about Ed Orgeron?
You just hearing the name, it's like, yeah, why not, right? It's when we talk about right now what this program needs in the next head coach. Carter said it. I think you shoot for the moon to start. You go after some of those big names, and even since Ed O has been talked about, there's coaches falling from the skies right now. It's just been so crazy the last week or two seeing all these guys get canned.
Yeah.
And why not? You know, I think my feel in this is, and I think we both share the top. I think our same top one candidate is Coach Eck, right? And I don't want to take away from Coach O, but I think it's hard to come in right now, especially in this new era of college football, and basically for him start all over again because that's what he's going to be doing. He never had to deal with all the NIL stuff. The Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Natty, that was given to him, right? You're asking some guy again to come in and sell Corvallis like it means something to them. And any new coach, unless it's Coach Smith, it's going to be tough. It's a tall task. You're asking anybody to come in and do, I'm going to use that famous word that I like to use, quote, the impossible. And you're basically starting over again. Now, if I had to pick and choose right now, it's Coach Eck, right? And it's very, very close, and this is going to tick a lot of people off.
Before you get into what you're going to say, and so Edo, no,
no,
okay, good, because
and I hope that's a lot of people feel that way right now. I think when you're first hearing names come out, it's like, give me everything I want to hear. And I said, you have to shoot for the moon, right?
Yeah.
First thing you start hearing is Ed O. It's like, heck yeah, dude. What are we talking about? Like, it's a no-brainer.
Honestly, it reminds me a lot of Les Miles when he was like come back into the, and I think he even reached out to, there was a rumor, Les Miles is in Corvallis right now. And I think ended up being false. And he ended up at Kansas and it was a nightmare, dude. They were terrible. I think just before you get to your point, I think if you bring in Ed O, it's a lot like a pro team bringing in some washed up old star to try and sell tickets, dude. He has issues when he doesn't have an insanely talented roster or a coaching staff. He'd be great for the media. I think like the press conference would get a ton of views, right? He'd probably grab us an ESPN or Fox game for that early non-conference slate, especially against like Texas Tech at home and Houston on the road. That's great and all, but for the long term, dude, I don't think he has a clue what he's doing. I don't think he has a clue of how to get guys to come to Corvallis. I don't think he has a clue how to win in the G6. So I'm a hard no on Neto. Proceed, Josh.
I think I have a top three right now, and it. I think the third one might surprise you a little bit because I'm starting to fall more in love with this guy.
Okay,
But it's
okay.
it's Kochak, right? And I think we both share the same one, and top two actually. It's a very close, very, very close second and first for me with Coach Smith. And that's going to tick a lot of people off. 'Cause there's a lot of people on social media right now that don't want to touch that guy with a 10-foot pole. But how do you not? I,
Yeah.
again, and it's funny because I just don't think about it. What Carter was saying, like, it really depends on how that went with Scott Barnes. It really does. Because Scott may be saying the same thing. I'm not going to touch that guy with a 10-foot pole. And we don't know because again, it just happens behind closed doors and it's just the reality of what Smith did when he was here. He's a proven winner. He can win football games. And like I said earlier, he can sell this place. He can get kids to come here and play. And I'm not saying no, any coach that comes here can't, but we need to weigh the options here. What do we want? What does Scott Barnes want? Are we wanting someone to come in here start fresh and you're basically starting all over again? Or we want somebody that comes in and has a little experience coaching at Oregon State, has a little experience behind the scenes, knows how to get kids here. And those again, it's the lesser of two evils. What do we want? Now, my third option here, Rob, which is kind of a dark
Drum
horse.
roll,
Yeah.
please.
Do you want to take a guess? I'll give you a little bit. He's on the West Coast.
Hmm. Is he currently coaching?
Sure. Yes, he is.
So it's not a prominent role.
Well, he's an intern right now.
Rob
West
Aiken.
Coast. No,
Oh,
oh, no. That's not dog and raw because we're one game into his tenure here. But what is what does UCLA have right now?
Jerry Neuheisel.
Yeah, no, we're talking a
He's
young.
only
Now,
the OC.
here we go. Why not? Right? Look what he's done to this UCLA team that looked like they weren't going to win a freaking football game all year either. Right? Again, change of culture. Come in, you got the young up and comer. It's just a name to throw out there. It's a name that I've seen kind of floating out there. But again, I think, like I said earlier, this is the most important hire we're ever going to see at Oregon State.
Yeah.
It's just wild and crazy to think this. Whatever way this goes, there's going to be people unhappy with it. There's going to be people happy with it, right? You can't please everybody in this hire.
No.
But I hope like what we see and what got announced with this hiring committee earlier today, that they really sit down and they really figure out what the top 3 or 5 priorities for this football program is going forward, and that they go out and they get that right fit for it.
Because, dude, if you get this hire wrong and it takes, 3, 4 years for Scott Barnes, if he's still around by then, to like finally cut the cord on it, and if it's going poorly, it's like you're going to end up looking like a New Mexico State kind of program, dude,
It's
because
going to be bad.
it's going to be bad. You have to nail this one. And we'll talk about this hiring panel that Scott Barnes put together in a little bit, but I wanted to go through my top 5 here, and we already named a couple of names. Jason Eckman, again, we agree. Number one, New Mexico should have hired him last year if he was available. I think he was part of that group that they could have hired. He made Giovanni McCoy look really good at Idaho. I think that's like the big thing here. And he's making New Mexico, who lost their coach and their quarterback and a lot of their roster, and he's looking pretty competitive there. And that's a hard place to be competitive at. So I think that's the kind of guy who gets more out of his players and just squeezes all the juice out of his orange, man. That's what he wants. Number 2 for me is Jonathan Smith, this like thing. But I think if you're Scott Barnes, if you do pick up the phone and your last conversation with him, probably not the greatest, right? It was, hey, I'm leaving. But if it was, cordial at least, like because Derek Ray said, it's hard to leave on your terms in today's college football, right? Because you have to get to the next place if you're going to take a job immediately for the portal, for recruiting, for all that stuff. You have to start immediately because they made it impossible. They've definitely dimmed that down a little bit. But you tell Jonathan, tell your agent to kick rocks It's just going to be you and me now. And also stop faking field goals. We're done with that, okay? And then it's interesting with if Smith were to get fired at Michigan State, which I think is going to happen. Would Trent Bray come back as a DC? Okay, is Brian Lindgren going to still be calling plays? Because I think he does come with that package a little, unfortunately. But there's a lot of, dude, you watch the 2023 games, 2022 games, there was a lot of great game plans, and it was a clear identity and brand of football. Because when you look at Smith, when he was at Oregon State, he was selling a place, right? And he knows this place. When he's at Michigan State, he's selling a brand. Okay, what is Jonathan Smith's brand? What has he won? Okay, he had a 10-win season at Oregon State, which is a huge feat for any coach. But, national landscape, no one really cared because it was just the Vegas Bowl against the 6-6 Florida team that you won that 10th game against. So his brand really wasn't that big, and that's what he's having a hard time. And I think this fan base in Michigan State is now realizing this guy doesn't know how to sell this place. He's losing commits. He's losing a lot of donors. He has poor connections there. And it's like, yeah, no duh. He had no connection to the place to start with. He's flaming out, like Carter said. You got to look at the guys who are flaming out. Just because they're losers doesn't mean they're going to be a loser with you. And we know that Jonathan can win here. Okay. So again, he's number 2 for me just because there's a lot of murkiness. There's a lot of waves in that ocean that you need to kind of surf through. But I have 3 and 4 kind of tied. So tied for third is Paul Christ, currently not working. He was with Texas last year. He's produced solid teams at Wisconsin, man. Like he won Coach of the Year twice. They went to a Rose Bowl. He knows Corvallis. He was an OC here. He's been here before. The only problem is he has no experience in the portal and the NIL era as a head coach. So that would be interesting here. Number 3, again, tied. Brent Vigen from Montana State. FCS winner, can build a program, knows how to win with less. Again, squeezing as much of that orange as you can. This is definitely a wild card for everyone. I don't think this name has really been tossed around by anybody from Oregon State, but Jimmy Doherty from Washington, their OC. It's a long shot. His team is pretty much rolling outside of that Michigan game last week. He's an interesting young guy, been around the Northwest quite a bit. Does he want to have a head coaching role? Does he want to step down to a group of 6 role? I'd give him a call, see what's going on. And my honorable mention list is Brian Harsin. He's the Cal OC. They're not doing that great, honestly, with their offense recently. Luke Heward, who is the USC OC, doesn't call plays, but definitely kind of in a CEO role for his offense as it is already. Kirby Moore is the Mizzou OC. I think he'd be a nice guy to call. Also, Troy Taylor currently does not have a job. Did not do well at Stanford, and I think we all know why. The resources there. This is pre-Andrew Luck and the pre-$50 million donation that they got. Troy Taylor built a really good program at Sac State. He did a lot of good things at the FCS level. He took the Stanford job, and he did a lot of good things at the Utah OC position before he went to Stanford. That's an interesting guy. I think I would just give him a call to just kind of test the water on that one to see what's going on with him. Because I know the same thing with a lot of people were like, what about David Shaw? What's he doing? I think that'd be a decent call too. Again, these Stanford coaches who had, a pretty tough row to hoe, that's a tough job down there before the Andrew Luck era. Like as a GM, I mean, that's a tough job. And then my last one to end my rambling, and I'll ask you a question, Josh. I want to see this get smile again. Rob Akey is on my honorable mention list because, man, he tugs at your heartstrings, like I mentioned, dude. And what does it take for Rob Akey and this staff to retain this job, dude? Does he have to go 5-0?
Well, that's funny. I asked that same question last week before Saturday on X. What does Akey have to prove to us to get that job, right? It's 5-0. Is that the top of the standard for him? Like, it seems pretty crazy if he comes out and goes 5-0, right? Now, I don't know where you draw that line. Again, do we want to get out of this comfortable, quote, easy hire, right? Coach Rob's been with the program for a while. He understands Corvallis. It seems like if that's the route you want to go, then that's your guy, right? But then are we going to get a Trent Bray 2.0 type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Is it just going to roll over season after season? Is it going to be miserable or what is it? So I almost think you have to go out of the box, right? It has to be somewhat different. You feel like it just has to be that breath of fresh air
And again,
for someone to come.
Yeah, he's not in my top 5. He's just an honorable
For
mention.
sure.
But I mean, what if he went out and got his own staff, right? Because this is not his staff. This is Trent Bray's staff, right? I don't think Rob would retain a lot of these guys on the offensive side of the ball. It's something to think about, because I like Rob a lot. I think he's a good dude, man. And when you look at his record at Idaho, you see the 20-50. But, dude, Idaho was a joke when he took that job. He went from the Wazoo, DC spot to just right over the highway to Idaho, and he brought them one really good season. And after that, they kind of, went back to being Idaho. But I think the job that he did there was honestly impressive. And again, he's not my choice, right? But it's just like he's already there, and we know Scott Barnes likes to do the easy things. So it's like, would it be the end of the world if the Beavers finished? They're not going to go 5-0. I don't think they will. But if they finished 4-8 this year, and they finished, Sam Houston and Tulsa are nothing to write home about. But I mean, if you get some wins on your belt and Rob Akey has the place feeling pretty good, it's like, I mean, you got to give him an interview. You got to give him a shot.
Sure. Yeah.
And you got to ask him the tough questions of like, are you going to hold your coaches accountable when things go south? Because clearly Scott Barnes already kind of threw water on that fire and said, yeah, Trent Bray was not willing to fire his guys. So Scott had to step in, and that's what he said to the media. So that's what's going to be interesting going forward. But I didn't mean to cut you off there, buddy. I apologize for that. But they did have a unveiling of the hiring panel today. Yeah, I'm just going to go through the names really quick. Brandon Cooks, we know who he is. Nikki Newberger, she played volleyball at Oregon State, Executive VP and Chief Brand and Product Activation Officer at Lululemon, and was also a Global VP for Nike. So two pretty prominent clothing and knows business. I think you're going to see it. We're going to see a trend here with these names. Okay, Marty Reeser, we know the Reeser name. Joth Ricci, mainly with Dutch Bros. This one kind of confused me. And then Mike Riley, we know who Mike Riley is. And then John Steerick, AD Board of Advisors. So you got to get someone from the board, obviously, in your panel. The only one that really just kind of sticks out to me is Joth. Like, what does Joth Ricci know about a football coach? You oversaw some coffee and soda companies. But, Josh, I'll give you the floor here. I think the main thing here, the theme here is we want a CEO for our football program.
Yeah, and I I don't mind it, right? We knew he had to go out and get a committee. I'm glad Brandon Cooks voiced his opinion, and he got what he wanted, right? It's important to have a guy like Cooks on that roster, on that committee. I wish he was still on the roster, but but then again, it's like, talk about Tim Ewis, friend of the pod, who's been so vocal about wanting to help this Oregon State program for many years now. Scott Barnes just throwing him the middle finger as usual, but
Tim did say he liked the list though, but yeah.
Here's my concern, and I try to check X while we're doing this, so if anything crazy happens, we can talk about it real quick. But John Canzano just put an article out, okay, about this hiring committee board. And in the article, this is what it says. Barnes has never before used a committee, but these are dicey times. His last hire, Trent Bray, face planted in the middle of the second season. One OSU athletic department insider noted that Barnes appointed a few people who have openly been critical of him. Now, this is where John's source comes in and says, he's getting blasted by everyone, quote. The source said, I think he wants to point to it and say it was a team decision if it goes well. He gets the credit for pulling it together with the committee. If it doesn't, he gets some cover, and then he can say it's on the committee, end quote. That's a little concerning to me, right?
I mean, yeah. If anybody's going to have a scapegoat, it's Scott Barnes, right?
God dang, dude, why can't we just get past this crap? Why can't I just, again, it just feels like if you're going to be the head of any athletic department, you have to have a pair of balls on you. And if you're not willing to take responsibility for anything, you got to go. Okay. And I said 2 weeks ago, if Barnes is on this committee or helping make this decision, it feels like it's going to be dicey. It's going to be questionable no matter what. Because again, now we're hearing again that is he using it as a scapegoat? And it seems like that's just the common word for everything that Scott Barnes has done at Oregon State is who's the scapegoat? What's the scapegoat? And how am I going to fly by the seat of my pants with this, right? I don't mind the committee. Like I said, I think there's 2 or 3 people on that committee that are very, very knowledgeable and great. I don't understand the guy that knows my coffee drink at Dutch Bros because I mean,
Hey, Coach Eck, what do
I,
you know about customer service and sticking heads in the windows at a Dutch Bros
how
drive-thru?
do you make a blended caramelizer, Coach?
How do you
But
expand franchises?
again, this is another one of the things where you shrug your shoulder, put your hands up, and be like, "Okay, Scott Barnes, like you do your thing,
Hey,
and it's just what it is."
I guess.
Because we're just, it's just so miserable. It feels like it's just rotating, rotating, and rotating wheel of. I don't want to take responsibility for anything, and if this goes great, I want that praise, and if it doesn't, well, then I have five other people I can blame it on. And it just sucks that it's got to be that way. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's a good thing that he got Mike Riley on, honestly, because the guy is around, right?
Huge.
He's
Yeah.
still in Corvallis. He's doing a lot with his daughter's company in downtown Corvallis, which I'm trying to check out in a couple of weeks. I heard she got some sweet vintage Beaver gear, so I'm trying to see that out, bro.
Ayo.
But it's great that Brandon Cooks is also going to be available to be on because look, this guy is still playing in the NFL. He was done at Oregon State in 2013, y'all. That's 12 years, and he's still playing. So obviously he knows a lot about football, and he still cares deeply about Oregon State football, which is great. Another person I know posted on X, or it might have been in our group chat, honestly, was look how much money Brandon Cooks has made over his NFL career, right? Do you also get him in there to be like, do you want to be a donor? Do you want to give money to this program? Like, because Oregon State needs their
They need
rich,
someone
they
or
need their
three.
rich donors to step up more than ever. And guys, if I won the lottery, they would rename the field after me. Okay, it'd be like Cody Campbell at Texas Tech. If I won the lottery, you'd be looking at Wilson Field. Okay, Wilson and Vlastelica Stadium.
Do I get
But
season tickets? That's all I care about.
yeah, I wouldn't even live in the state of Oregon. I'd just be like, put my name on it. I'll give you all the money you want. But I think overall, I think there's a couple of names on here where I'm just kind of like, all right, whatever. But overall, again, the theme is clearly they want someone who can run a business, CEO style, because that's what football and college football is. It's a business, and they need you to be good at it. We don't need you to be a defensive coordinator, also being a head coach. We don't need you to be like Lincoln Riley, where you're still calling plays. It's very clear that Scott Barnes wants somebody like a Mike Gundy who has not called plays in like 30 years, and I'm just going to run this. I'm just going to run this thing, just like Jonathan Smith did at Oregon State. I'm just going to run the entire thing. I'm going to know what's going on in each and every position group. That's my job, and my job is to motivate and recruit and win and just manage the game. That's what they want, and it's very clear. So, judging off of this list and who they're going to hire, um, from my top five and who they're having to hire the coach, I think Jason Eck is a guy who's going to be a CEO, right? Brent Vegan, a guy who's going to be a CEO. Paul Christ, same thing. Jonathan Smith. These are all guys that are going to be CEOs. It's going to be it's going to be really interesting to see who's coming in out of those doors as soon as this football season is over. And again, Scott Barnes made the right hire in 2018. He made the wrong hire, unfortunately, in 2023. So take it as you will. This is a big time hire. This is a big time opportunity for Scott Barnes to right his ship and to shut some people up. And as much as I don't believe in him, as much as I do not like the man, I had a DM honestly from a guy who was at the game, and he said me and a couple of buddies like booed him in his face, and he just kind of smirked at us and walked by like he knew his job was going nowhere. And there was also a report recently, again, just a rumor, just a report, that he kind of turned a cold shoulder to a prior women's soccer coaching staff who may or may not have reported some abuse of the players, some harassment. And then that coach just left for another job, and he just was like, okay, I guess that's dealt with. So, again, Scott Barnes is the kind of guy who just wants to take the easy way out. And I hope this hiring panel will be strong enough to challenge him, right? And I think somebody like Nikki can challenge him because she's a person of very high interest, right? Lululemon. What if Oregon State just said, we're done with Nike. We're going to have Lululemon jerseys.
I mean, what else, right? Who
What if that
cares?
happened? Like, she's a very
Yeah.
big person of interest, right? Because she went to Oregon State. She played volleyball there. The Reeser family, we know about them. They've been a huge help to Oregon State. Okay, and then Mike Riley, someone who knows football, someone who is still very much tapped into college football as he has also, been on the playoff committee. So I think overall it's a pretty good group. Again, I just don't understand the Dutch Bros guy. I would like to talk to him and be like, "What do you know about football?" Because he went to Oregon State. I know he's a beef, but it's like, yeah, we'll see. I'm curious to see what happens, man. But just some other notes to kind of close this thing out, man. There are some certain fans in our fan base that really need to be slapped by reality. We're having talks about like some guys want to make the playoff like every single year. It's like Oregon State's not in a position to make the playoff every single year, guys. It's like Derek said last year. Are you going to be the team that catches lightning in a bottle every 4 or 5 years and just like
Hmm.
is the 12 seed? That is more than likely Oregon State's future, right? They should always have a winning program. I think that's the bare minimum at Oregon State. We need to win at least 7 games every single season. I think over time, though, if you keep on winning seven, 3, 4 years, it's tiring, right? We saw that kind of under Mike Riley. Where you're winning 8 to 10 games, 9 games a year, you're like, these are cool, but can we take another step? I think that's what Oregon State fans have been really wanting to do over these last 2 decades. It's just like, can we take that next step? But overall, we need to just take a step back as a fan base and just understand reality. We need to stomach it. It's the hardest thing to do. We need to stomach reality. And right now, this football program is in a lot of trouble. And when you fire a coach, especially in these 2 years of purgatory, this is not what we wanted, right? We didn't want to see Trent Bray go the way he did. And it's unfortunate what happened. I did hear that he was with Coach Brennan last week and they were trying to get ready for Houston. So technically, Trent Bray lost to Houston twice this year. That sucks. I mean, that's just brutal. But I think I think we just have to just realize where we are because look, guys, next season's probably going to suck too, right? It's probably going to be a tough first year for a new head coach in a new place, whoever it is. It's going to be another transition period of like we got to wait a year to get our guys in, right? We got to get our guys, and then year two is when you have to really step it up in these days of college football. So we just need to take a step back and just let's try to celebrate the wins, man. We beat Lafayette. Let's try to celebrate that first, okay?
Yay.
And the students, man, great job with the shirtless stuff. That's fun, man. It's been a big trend in college football. Oklahoma State did it. Then they started doing the banana suit conga line. Oregon State students have been great this season in the home games. They've showed out for the first half at least, and they've been loud. They've been energetic. The shirtless thing is so fun. Okay, there was a group of students during that reporter trying to do just an in-game thing for whatever news channel she works for, and it is just an absolute joke. That's an embarrassment. The kid yelling 6'7" the whole time. Kid, shut up. Someone else needs to be like, "Hey, buddy, shut up," you know? Like, and it looked like one of his buddies was like trying to like get him to chill out, and then he just like took out his phone and started recording him. And I'm like, so you thought it was a better idea to record him and tell him to shut up? I mean, like, geez, dude. And that reporter, I forget her name. I think she is a duck actually, so this doesn't really help us at all. She did a great job. She was so professional in that whole thing, dude.
Great.
Like, that's just. And the kid sticking his face in the camera. It's like, guys, who are your parents? I would like to talk to them. Uh, that's just terrible. Lower the acceptance rate. We're gonna let these idiots into school. It's ridiculous, dude. It's an embarrassing. And now it's been plastered all over. I've seen it on Instagram about 10 times. I've seen it on X 10 times, dude. I'm like, oh my god, we cannot run away from this. That is embarrassing. These kids these days are lacking a lot of respect, and it's. I'm glad you're a father, Josh, because I know your kids would never do that. So
I've my kids say 6'7" all the time, bro. And I don't I'm not gonna go there. It's not worth
it, it's
it's not
it's
worth it.
it's funny in certain like well, I think it was the Utah State radio announcer. He has a camera on him the whole time, just like for his own TikTok clips, whatever. And his caption was like, "Sorry, I live with a 14-year-old." He's talking about his son,
Yeah.
and he was
Yeah.
all like, "Ah, looks like so and so rushed for about 6, 7 yards." And then he looks at the camera and does the hand thing, and I'm like, "See, that's funny, right? That's funny. When you're just yelling it behind a reporter who's trying to do her job over and over and over and over, and it has no context, shut up." Remember when Chip Kelly turned around and told those Duck fans
That
during
was
the
so great. Just so beautiful. Aaron Andrews. Yeah, that's so clutch.
we needed someone to do that for those kids, dude.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Uh, so a couple weeks ago, you guys know we had Tim Ewis on, and he mentioned because we were talking about Malik Murphy back then, right? He's like, "Yeah, Derek had a lot of bad days," and it's so funny, Josh. As a kid, like when I watched Derek Anderson, I'd be like, "Wow, this guy's amazing. He's so good." I've been going back because when your team sucks, you watch old games to feel good about yourself. So I've been watching like these 2002 to 2004 full games on YouTube, and Tim is right, dude. Derek had a lot of tough days.
For sure.
Derek was all over the place. Watching him now as a grown man and just like, God, he threw some of the ugliest, the most dangerous balls you'll ever see, and then he would throw the prettiest ball in the world. You'd be
Hmm.
like, oh, there's Kenny Farley, dude. Like, dang, that's pretty cool. Uh, But it's just so funny, like going back and watching old games because like you kind of get like as a kid, especially like you definitely get caught up in like all only good plays, like good moments only, and then you go back and watch it as an adult, you're like, dang, Derek Anderson like wasn't that good at Oregon State. He just like had a long, decent career at Oregon State, and like his body and his potential got him to the NFL, right? Like it's just so funny how that all works out. But yeah, man, it's been a very interesting football season. Just
Yes.
and dude, I
This,
watched. Go ahead.
as I said, this it's almost over too. It's crazy how fast it's gone,
I
and
know, man. We haven't even had a
feels
bye
like
week. Like this is our first bye week, and it's
I
October
know,
20th today. Like
I know.
it's crazy, dude. But yeah, baseball has had some scrimmages. Just to kind of touch on them a little bit. Looks like they'll be redoing their offensive philosophy a little bit. Looks like they'll be playing a little bit more smaller ball, which only does them good for playing in stadiums like Omaha because that place is obviously way too big for the power. One of the most powerful teams in Oregon State baseball history last year had a hard time hitting the ball to the ballpark there, and playing small ball only does you good in the end. Like you need to be able to bunt, get guys to go over, and be able to score in any way possible. So it sounds like they've been doing that. They did drop a game. I'm not sure. Did they play Nevada over the weekend? Do you know?
I don't.
Yeah, they played. They've been playing doubleheaders. They did drop one. I think it was like 8-2. So they're still figuring it out, man. It's only October. They got a long ways to go until their season starts. But I'll be seeing them again here in Round Rock, in Texas. That'll be exciting. Hopefully, it's not freezing cold again, but they probably will be. And men's basketball got a closed door scrimmage win against Cal, 76-66 in Moraga, which is St. Mary's. Does that count as a Wayne Teasdale
100%.
road win?
If you don't count that, then you got issues. 100%. Way to
Uh,
go. He's already turning it around this
It
year.
sounds like they shot the ball pretty well, but Cal's terrible, dude. They haven't had a good basketball program in quite a while now. But yeah, man, that's it for me. Really good to win a game. Really nice to have this week off. I hope you guys enjoy the bye week. Watch some other teams play football and remember what it looks like to watch a good, successful football program. That's my note to you. And sorry to the Wazoo fans, man. That was a tough loss at Virginia. I believe we're gonna have John Sukanek on for the Wazoo game. Yeah.
For sure. Yep.
All right, man. It'll be his third time coming on, so him and Carter are gonna be tied.
Just gotta keep going back and forth, right? We're doing
Uh,
something right.
Apparently, yeah, apparently. But yeah, man, that's it from me. Go Beavs, guys. Thank you for listening so much. We appreciate you, Josh. Any last words?
Yeah, just kind of echo what you said. It felt good to see a win, right? And I think there's some good opportunities coming up to catch a couple more dubs going into the end of the year. And I think it's badly what this program, this fan base needs going forward, just with everything that's happened off the field drama, the athletic department drama, football drama, just everything you have, you just got to find some light, right? So I'm very thankful to see Coach Akey come out and see a little bit of that culture change and making some tough decisions and getting it done, right? But much needed bye week, and here we go. And the podcast doesn't stop with bye weeks, Rob. We just keep chugging
No,
along, and
sir.
uh, we're holding an ace up our sleeve for next week.
So, who is going to be the guest next week?
Our guest next week for Chainsaw Crew is